Hello guys, just Goron here and welcome back to another episode of Building Beekse Bergen. And in today's episode we are going to be working on the flamingo habitat, as well as doing some fixes based on my previous visit, which was the day before yesterday. So taking some reference images of the flamingos, I could tell that the path land bridge thing sloped down quite a bit over here, so that's what I'm doing right now, is getting the shape from that image in there, as well as you could see me do earlier, put a bit of a moat down there, which is actually where a moat is meant to be. Now this is a new thing I've been doing. I'm not sure if I really properly explained that, but what I've been doing is putting down path using the curb markers, which paints the terrain with sand, so that I can then remove the path and terraform around it. The terrain will stay, so I will know where the path is meant to be, and that way I can kind of figure out the terrain and make sure that there's space for the path. Now we're painting this entire area with soil and mud, pretty much. In real life, this entire area is like a barren wasteland, and being at the zoo the day before yesterday, I was told by one of the zookeepers that it's just because the rhinos that are on that field just grazed away all the grass, so there's no strand of grass left standing because the rhinos ate it all. So that's pretty interesting. So now here we are updating our little reference point building, which is the start of the aviary that the flamingos are in. Now I've had people comment on Discord, like, are flamingos, like, I've never seen flamingos in an aviary. Well, I guess you don't have to put them in there necessarily, or something, but they definitely are in this zoo. So that's what we are building right here. So we're putting in this little fence, which is what the aviary connects to. Same as in real life, they've got this same type of fence, and then a net spun across it. So I got the shape in. I put down our reference points and a little viewing platform, which is going to be changed a bunch later on, and a keeper gate over there, which is also where the real life keeper gate is. So there's actually another one on this side, a little gate, but I've just made that one the main one because I don't see a really useful or way to access the other gate. There the fence actually got a pretty weird shape, so I used the curved barrier top to fix that and make it straight again. Don't know what happened that caused it, but whatever. And here we terraform a very shallow pool of water with some small islands, and get those down quite a bit and make it all nice and smooth and shallow. And then it's just a case of detailing. It's a small habitat. There's actually kind of a space issue with the amount of flamingos that I would like to put in there. And this is a weeping willow that I got off the workshop. It uses nettle to create the weeping strands of leaves. And basically I took the workshop one and I made my own smaller version of it using some of its pieces. And in real life there's a little pole kind of keeping the tree together. I guess is recently planted there. So here I was looking for a piece that I could use. I ended up going with this little art piece, which is kind of like a rubber band kind of rope thing that is holding the tree in place. And then there's just a whole bunch of birch, as well as large poles, which keep the aviary, or keep the net up. And I was just looking at all the different logs and seeing which one I liked the most. Here I'm using Google Maps as a reference to to look at where the poles are supposed to be standing. And there I took some aviaries off the workshop. There weren't that many, but I was just looking at how they did it, and one had a bunch of ropes attached from the middle pole to each of the fence posts, and I kind of took that idea as my main method. So we're not actually going to make like a full-on net across this thing. I'm just gonna attach ropes from each of these poles to each of the poles of the fence, and that is going to simulate the net, because the flamingos can't escape. The fence prevents them from doing so already, so the entire net is just optional. So I'm not going to put too much effort into it. Well, I mean, it's still a lot of effort to connect up those ropes, you'll see in a bit, but I'm not going to make a whole net. I'm just going to do those ropes, and that's enough, because it kind of gives the idea of the net being there. In real life you also don't really see the net on many pictures, but you do see those ropes, so that's why I want those in. And you can just imagine there being a net yourself. So yeah, just a bunch of foliage, just really get that wetland feeling. I'm probably going to be changing the way that the entrance thing looks. It's still going to go through a bunch of revisions in this video alone, but now it's really just a case of getting all the pieces in correctly. And oh yeah, this is an interesting part. I'm hiding the foraging, what you call them, the foraging pools. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, hiding the foraging pools under the ground. Sadly, the flamingos don't use them, as in they don't stand there and start foraging, but it does fill up their nutrition, oddly enough. Like the keepers do fill it and they eat out of it, but they just never show the animation of them eating from it. So yeah, it's a bit odd, but it works, and this way we don't have to put any food balls or stuff like that in. And here you can see we are putting the ropes down, kind of hanging them, giving them a bit of a curve. The curved ropes are sadly too short to be put in, and also they curve a bit too much. So I'm using 2-meter ropes and putting in the curves myself. And I'm using these logs to line up the ropes to where I want them to be. And then I'm replacing them with rope and kind of putting them in. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Oh, yeah, I'm buying some flamingos and putting them in. Just a whole bunch of them. Because I was like, before I put the ropes in, I should make sure that the habitat is actually suitable for them. So that's why I started putting in the flamingos. They are a bit low on space. I could remove some of them, but in the real zoo there are tons of them in there, and so I did want to get that feel across. But of course animal welfare is important, so if the game says there's too many, we gotta get some of them out of there. But right now we have struck a pretty good balance where they're happy enough to not warrant any protesters, which is good enough for me. So yeah, here I'm just lining up a bunch of logs, as I talked about in the last episode. Workflow, don't do it log, rope. No, log, put in all the ropes, rotate the ropes into place, kind of figuring out how they're actually meant to be rotated, and then do a whole bunch of ropes at once, like so. And this is an incredibly time-consuming process. Like we don't actually finish putting in all the ropes this episode, because I get distracted later on. But the ropes that we do put in took around 2 hours to do. So yeah, this is an incredibly time-consuming process of just rope for rope, getting that curve right. But in my opinion, the results do pay off quite well. I think it looks great. I'm kind of debating how many, like maybe extra robes, like getting some of that net feeling across. But I just want to finish the whole thing and then see how it looks. And this is kind of how I want to do like each of the aviaries in the zoo. There's actually quite a bunch of them. If I just get the map out. I think there's like 5 or something. Let's see. So there's the Flamingo aviary. There's a wetland aviary, as well as a forest aviary. They're pretty close together. Then there's a hippo aviary, as well as a vulture aviary. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, at least 5. I think 6 even. 6 aviaries. So, of course, we don't have that many birds in the game. So I'm kind of still debating on what I'm gonna do with all of those. Probably kind of spread out peafowl and flamingo evenly across them, and maybe I'll just leave some of them empty as well. Just gonna have to kind of figure that out. I know that one of the aviaries also contains some other animals, like there's one that has dik-diks in them, so maybe we can put some other kind of small antelope creature in that one, if it's even large enough, because it's very small. Now over here I'm kind of figuring out, like, is there a way I can put those feeding things in a way that they do use them, but I couldn't get it to work, so I just put it back in the ground. And I also put a art piece in that tree, just like we did with the hyenas, to give them some hard cover. I don't know why flamingos want hard cover. They don't seem like the type of animal that needs it, but the game wants to give it to them. I couldn't get them. I tried to change this platform in such a way that it gave them hard cover, but either it doesn't count or they don't. They can't reach it or something because of the slope. I think that's the problem. But yeah, I'm just changing this thing over and over to get it right and extending it, because A, I feel like it should be more extended, and B, I was trying to get that hardcover in to give the animals more welfare, because if I can get more hardcover, I might be able to shove like 1 or 2 extra flamingos in there without them complaining too much. But couldn't really get it to work, so I also decided to just remove that art piece, and that is the end of the flamingos. So right now we are at the point where I have been to the zoo again, and I noticed a bunch of things, and I started to change some things around and work on more parts of the zoo. So here I'm kind of looking at what there is to do, and this is the main thing that we're going to be working on for the remainder of this episode. I noticed that the water of the big body of water, the lake of the zoo, and the moats of the monkeys are not at the same level. So I have to go in and basically higher up the entire monkey islands and habitats and stuff like that. So that all needs to be like, I feel like it should be even higher, but oh. Alright, sorry for that. My roommate entered my room, but he's sorry. So yeah, I feel like it should be even higher, but that would just be too much of a hassle. So I'm keeping it at this point, and now we are redoing pretty much everything we did in the last episode, which I felt quite bad about because it kind of rendered the entire last episode useless. But yeah, I'm redoing this entire staircase thing. I figured out a much more efficient way to do the 2-meter paths by looking at the latest. Okay, well, by the time the episode goes live, it's no longer the latest, but at the time of watching the latest Koali Zoo episode, in which they built the reptile house, and the late designer was using angle snap to get the paths much straighter than I had them. So I was using that method to get a much straighter path, which actually also made the leaves that I had on the side no longer necessary, which was great. So now we have a much neater tribune staircase thing. I still don't know what to call it. And yeah, I'm redoing a lot of terraforming here. Of course, we need to accommodate for the higher path, and I'm also getting it slightly more accurate than we had it. And yeah, I'm getting the path in. Oh, I haven't just realized I haven't put the benches back in, but I'm sure I can get those soon enough. And yeah, now it's just a case of getting this path across and just a lot of fidgeting around with the pathing, basically. It is, I want to say messy, but it ends up quite well. And yeah, there we have the first primate house just copied over here. We're pretty much going to remove the entire thing in the next episode, which I've already recorded. Because in that one we're going to make the actual building of the second primate house, which, contrary to what I first thought, is actually very different than the first one. Not just in color, but also in shape and materials. So yeah, we'll get to that in the next episode, I guess. So yeah, this is pretty much finishing up this last time of redoing the path and getting the staircase right. And then that is the ending. Oh yeah, I decided to, instead of stacking them on top of each other, to get a second one and have it kind of a bit more smooth. It looks better that way. And now just a little staircase of wood, because that part is actually made out of wood, I noticed when I was there the day before yesterday. And there we have it, just filling in these areas and get the water in. And that finishes up this episode. So in the next episode we will be working on the second primate house, getting that in. Still have these temporary things to keep the animals happy, and that finishes that up. So thank you guys for watching. Not a lot of screenshots for today. I've got one of the aviary. Oh yeah, it never ends. I saw in a photo that the shape of that was slightly different, so I decided to change it while I still can, because now the ropes aren't in. Once the ropes are in, I'm not going to touch this thing anymore, because it would be too much work to change. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Here's one screenshot of the aviary comparison, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.